All right, welcome to episode 13. We've got Tyson Drake here, one of my favorite people to follow on Twitter. He drops a bunch of knowledge. We go deep on merchandising. We talk what top of funnel channels we're measuring, what are we testing, how are we approaching those? And Tyson gives us a great analogy how he dislocated his shoulder at a metal concert. So a lot to look forward to. Thanks for tuning in. And thank you to our sponsors, Motion, Prescient AI, Richpanel, and Haus.
So all of us use Motion every single day, every single week, and we love it. And I would get a lot of questions about how we use it to help simplify our creative strategy, organize all the tests and learnings that we're doing, and ultimately help us make better ads. And so today I actually want to share, I think this is perfect timing. We just wrapped up our Memorial Day sale. So I actually want to share some of the reports that we're looking at to help, make better ads, understand our ads, figure out what we can do to iterate on these winners, and then actually prepare for Black Friday. So let's get into it. So there's a few different types of reports you can create. One that I really love is called the comparative analysis feature. You can essentially take any variables that you have, if you have it in your naming conventions, and you can break it down to see how things compared. And so the number one thing that we look at for any promo every week, but also on a monthly period that I have sent to me, is how did our videos versus statics perform? And so you can see here, we spent a lot more on video. We actually used to spend a lot more on statics during promos. For whatever reason, that flipped. Pretty similar ROAS, but obviously videos did a lot better. So that's one that we're going to look at just to get a quick pulse on how we're doing. Then we're going to look at by concept. So we launch all of our tests by concepts. And so, we may have a bunch of ads in each one. But the cool thing about this, we may have this concept, this PCC unboxing in 8 different campaigns, and it's very hard to go in Facebook and try to find all of them. Motion makes it super easy, aggregates everything right here, and we can see that was our top spender. One thing I love about it, you can also ingest and bring in your North Beam attribution. So we can see how much we spent on that concept, what were the ADA metrics, what was the Facebook ROAS and North Beam ROAS for pretty much everything. And we can see which of our concepts got the most spend, best ROAS, and see, how we want to do. And so that's comparative analysis. The other thing we'll look at is just top ads. And so again, if you have one ad in multiple campaigns, this will aggregate it all into one concept based on just whatever ads have the same naming convention. Every week, I get a report sent to me. We do a comparative analysis that's saying, hey, of all the products, here's how much you spent on each one of all the products we have in our ad account and what's our ROAS. And then secondly, here's our top 7 ads. And I just want to see, did anything new make it into the mix? Is anything fatiguing? So these are reports we look at all the time for evergreen stuff, but also for promo periods. So that's Motion. I absolutely love it. And if you want to try it out too, like all of us here in the pod, go to motionapp.com. And if you tell them that you're coming from the Marketing Operators Podcast, you'll get 50% off your first month.
All right, here we are. It's been a couple weeks since Connor and Cody and I have gotten together, and we got Tyson here today. How are you guys doing?
Yeah,
doing great.
Awesome, thanks.
Feeling good? Any big life updates from you guys? What's going on? It's been 2 full weeks since we've recorded a pod.
I know, it feels like a while, right? Doesn't it feel like it's been forever?
Dude, I'm feeling a little off my game, to be honest. I got nerves a little bit,
I know.
I was going to turn it back on you, Connor. I want to hear what is it? Are you 3 weeks a married man now? Anything change? Any different feelings? What's the married life like?
2.5 weeks. I will say, I forget sometimes that people listen to the podcast. So I've been mentioning it now for like a month, and it's been really sweet. Like a couple people, I am going to connect with the guy from Mott and Bow, and he was like, dude, congrats on getting married. And it's like, so awesome to people kind of know about your life. It's been really sweet. People saying that, but we got married May 31st. So it's been 18 days. It's been awesome. Very much digging the married life. I told you guys earlier, we didn't do like a proper honeymoon. We're here in Salt Lake City, Utah. So we just did almost like the staycation version of a honeymoon. We went up to Park City, 30 minutes away, hung out by the pool, nice hotel, ordered room service. Fantastic. So that's been my experience so far. I'd give it a 10 out of 10, easy.
Wow, what your wife listens? Is that why you're saying that?
Yeah.
And he still
that was always my least favorite question.
Ring.
Seriously. Yeah, Sean, if you're listening, give him some shit about that.
I've got small hands. And Ridge, we sell like really masculine, bulky rings. I don't think it's for me.
for the husky man.
Yeah. So that's a big update for me. Connor, you're next in line. Pressure's on, bud.
Ooh, pressure. I mean, I don't know how I can follow the first 18 days of marriage. You know what? I just got back from New York City I just got back from New York City.
I was
out there
pressuring
last
you into
week.
getting married next. Cody's locked down. I'm locked down.
Brother.
You're the bachelor of the
God.
crew.
Also, how
Well,
are
I
you
do
in
have
New
a
York and not
girlfriend.
calling me? Both of you guys went to New York and didn't call me. What the hell?
I know. We had a fairly full slate. I needed to fit you in. I will say the New York
Next
City
time.
summer energy is just something else. Like the scale and the amount of people and the variability in the people. It's so cool. It was such a fun place to hang out. I was like city biking around, going over I think it's the Williamsburg Bridge. I saw an e-com homie I'd never met in person, and he was giving me a little bit of a lay of the land and how to navigate the city. And I had a lot of fun. I'm out in Denver, so it's a very different vibe, but it was cool to be out there and explore the city a little bit and hang out.
Dude, awesome. All right. So we're all thriving. Look, we can get into the episode. We've got Tyson Drake here. I will admit, Tyson's been one of my favorite Twitter followings. I am a devout consumer of Tyson Drake tweets. I was joking that he's been like shadow managing my team a little bit. There's been more than a couple threads where I'll send through and I'm like, oh, this is what we should do, guys. Like he's got it figured out here. Dashboards, some merchandising stuff. So we're gonna get into it today. I'm super stoked to have him. But Tyson, for those unfamiliar, give us the rundown. What makes you the marketing expert that you are?
Yeah, I mean, I've just messed up a lot of times probably. No, I've been in ecom for like 15 years, like self-taught degen affiliate marketer. Started off doing ClickBank products back in the day when you could just do a lot of arbitrage between Google Ads. So self-taught Google Ads guy and SEO back in the day. Like back in the day when you could only, like everyone could, on the like Google Ads search click, you could direct people to the same landing page, right? You don't have to have any landing page variation. And so, did some affiliate degen, moved on to like being the first hire of a fitness company, and then grew that to the largest online fitness retail in Australia at the time. Spent some time in Europe. This is like 2014 now. Spent some time in Europe. Ended up like networking my way to a venture capital firm called Prescient AI Ventures. Typical VC firm is like 4 managing directors. They had like a 100-person operational team, so everything from performance marketing, business intelligence, back end, front end dev, like HR, recruitment, full stack VC firm. So I was part of the performance marketing team where we'd go into our portfolio companies, mostly direct to consumer and marketplaces, and be their performance marketing team, like do the work, or maybe they're like acquired by a PE firm if they're a 9-figure brand, and we'd like help their team like level up and like coach them and train them for the next stage of growth. And then moved back to Australia with my fiance, who I met in Switzerland, in Geneva. And since then I've just been back in Australia, spent some time in fashion, went for an IPO with an internet service provider. And I was a CMO at the Oodie for about almost 2 years. And that was probably the most amazing experience that I had was really probably, that and my time in Berlin. And then for the past just over a year now, I've been a fractional CMO, and I was first introduced to the concept of a interim CMO when I was at the venture capital firm. We had like there'd be a CMO, and then they'd take a team into the different portfolio companies, and we would help them scale and grow. And I thought the interim CMO, I was like, that is the coolest job in marketing, where you can just go into these companies and you can be responsible for the entire marketing function and really just like help them with like implementing frameworks or hiring, recruitment, and business intelligence or whatever that may be, and like then kind of like fade out if it's like project based. So I've always kind of had that in the back of my mind, and now I'm like, well, it's as good as time as ever to try it. In hindsight, probably not, because e-commerce probably probably peaked when I left. So I've been trying to chip away at what I'm attempting to do, which is this fractional CMO concept. And I really appreciate your shout out, and appreciate you liking my threads as well. Sometimes some of your like employees reach out to me about, oh, what's this, or how did you do this, or how do you think about this? And I'm just like, no problem. No problem. No problem.
You're less of a shadow manager and more of a direct manager at that point. I'm like, just go ask Tyson. Perfect. No, awesome. I appreciate the rundown. I didn't know I'd seen the degen affiliate background. That's an interesting entry point into digital marketing. But I feel like 15 years ago, I meet a lot of people who like kind of have a they like really grinded it out early, drop shipping, affiliates, stuff like that. Good way to cut your teeth.
Yeah, it's I just downloaded ebooks, just bought like how to do Google ads and how to do SEO, and then just it's just an evolution, right? Like you start one channel, you start with Google ads, you go to another channel, you like just learn by doing, right? I mean, there's only so many 2009, 2008, there's only so many courses out there, right? And so you just have to like try some things, and okay, that doesn't work. Try some. Okay, this is working, and then just like you just keep learning and you keep learning, and but I really cut my teeth when I was in Berlin. Like they were, like if you're familiar with the Dunning-Kruger effect, where like you think you know a lot early on, and then like you realize how much there is to learn, and then you kind of like realize you don't know very much. That was kind of me when I went to this venture capital firm. I was like, yeah, we're the largest online retailer for fitness in Australia at the time. We were importing our equipment from China, like direct to consumer in like 2009 to 2013. We opened showrooms, and I was like, yeah, we know a lot of stuff. And then I get to Berlin, I'm just like, oh my God, like, I don't know anything about internationalization. I don't know anything about like, like learning contribution margin in 2014. And I was like, what is this? Like all these ex-Rocket Internet, like people like who grew like billion-dollar companies like Zalando and like HelloFresh are like really cut their teeth. And so I'm just like, all right, I'm going to be a sponge and just learn as much as I can. And that probably developed a lot of my foundational knowledge during that period of time.
Yeah, awesome. Well, cool. Look, we'll get right into it. The first topic that we've got in the docket here is merchandising and marketing, which I think we all kind of chime in around. We're all going through quite different experiences when it comes to like category expansion or like general merchandising strategies. These are some of the threads that I've appreciated the most, or just like content in general. I was hoping, Tyson, you could just quick definition of how you define merchandising. We could go around the horn as well afterwards, because I think many brands think about it different ways. But when you think about it, how do you define it?
Yeah, so I mean, merchandising is like a really broad topic, right? It's like, what is marketing? And so I'll define it, and then we can talk about the different elements as well. So for me, it's the selection and presentation of products to meet customer needs and maximize profit. And so I'm happy to break that down a lot further, because it's a cross-functional competency, right? It's across creative, it's across the product, it's across marketing. So yeah, but I'll leave it with that definition. We can go from there.
Cool. Connor or Cody, like you guys are doing different things. Do you guys have official merchandising roles at either of your brands?
Not official. I mean, it really falls under, for us, like I guess technically under web and CRO. Like we've been talking a lot about merchandising recently within the context of our web setup, and I'm trying to like really push our team to operate under the framework of, hey, if someone comes direct to our site, lands on our homepage, can they get to any product page that they want? And is the path to that product page just super clear? Right now, it's not. I mean, it's probably, I think it's, I see it every day, so I hate it at this point. But we have some designs out that we're working on for an updated nav. But like that's the context that we've been talking a lot about merchandising, is like how available and accessible are these products on our site, and then manipulating that based on what we need to move more of. It's like, okay, we want to get aprons moving. Well, how do we add a homepage section, and how do we move that up in the nav, and how do we do all these different things to get people on that page easier? But yeah, it definitely falls under CRO, and then inputs from our product director, who is doing all things product development and go to market on new products.
Totally. Yeah. And that's how I thought about it for a long time. People like on-site merchandising, like how are you laying out the product? I used to work at Hollister in high school. So we'd merchandise the product. We'd like fold up the clothes and stack them up and like make it look good. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's what it is. We hired a chief merchandising officer last year who was like, it is, at least the way he defined it, which is closer to Tyson's, it's like way more like full stack. You're going all the way from selecting to feedback on product development to bringing it to the marketing team, making sure it ultimately gets presented. So it's just like a super hairy term, I think. Cody, how do you guys think about it?
Yeah, you don't see a lot of merchandising in beauty. I think there's probably more like product marketing. So the really the only two people we have on the C-suite are myself and our chief product and operations officer. And so we kind of split it. So like product development's her background. So they do all product development. She has demand planning on her team. I, kind of cover it from like a revenue perspective. And then, my team, kind of our brand marketing team, does our product marketing, which is like our go-to-market. Here's how we're going to position this. Here's how much we're going to focus, like what channels we're going to, what levers we're going to pull for a launch. So those are kind of like the two. So yeah, we don't have a specific merchandising function, but it's kind of a collaboration, between product and ops team and then marketing, if that makes sense, in terms of, here's what we're going to push, here's what we're talking about, here's our inventory, here's our go-to-market strategy, here's our product development pipeline, where that fits within our like revenue goals.
Yeah, interesting. That sounds a bit like how I've come to understand it over the last year. So Tyson, hearing our answers, and you obviously talked to like dozens of brands over the last 10 years or whatever about merchandising. Like, do you often see people misunderstand it, or like, do you think it's like well adopted in the e-com industry? I'll give another anecdote. When we hired our chief merchandising officer, Sean, our CEO, was like, yeah, we've never done merchandising. And it's like, no, you can't not do merchandising. Yeah. It's just how like explicit do you want to do it and how formal of a process is it? So I felt like we were in a really like nascent stage when this was only like 14 months ago and we really started taking it seriously. How do you think like the overall D2C industries?
Yeah, so for me, it's really a cross-functional competency, right? And I think the best way to explain it is from the perspective of the 4 Ps of marketing. So product, price, place, and promotion. In your case, kind of, you have a chief merchandiser, right? And so they've coming in and they'll be like, no, you do merchandising. And it's because it's a cross-category function. And I'll break it down. So let's talk about product. And so of course, it starts with the product. And with, like anything, it's, who is our customer? And it starts with some research about how can we uniquely solve a problem for our customers? And so it starts with maybe they have a problem, and we're in some unique position to be able to solve that problem. And then it goes like to design, and they might do some design iterations on that product. It goes to some kind of product development life cycle. You get back some samples, etc. But then the merchandiser, or it might depending on your org, who is responsible. But usually, if you have a chief merchandiser, they'll be responsible for like, okay, what is the breadth of our products that we're going to go through? You mentioned aprons you recently launched. It's like, so that was a merchandising decision, right? So someone has decided we are going to launch aprons, and not only that, we're going to launch aprons in these colors, and that is a merchandising decision, right? And so I think merchandising and product can get a bit mixed up, but that's like the first P of the 4 Ps, and then how deep you buy, not in terms of inventory, although that is a decision, right? More so like what colorways, what is like the sizes that we offer. So that's kind of like the depth part, and then you have the next P, which is price, right? And your product has to fit like a certain price point within the market, and that may be by premium, there might be a lower end, and so you have maybe compressed margins, and that as a result of that informs like what suppliers you use and how you position your product within the market. So that's like the pricing point, and it's of course, well, what do we price at? When do we discount? What margin profile do we want to have with this product? And so that's like the price part of merchandising. And then we have place. So place, what I'm referring to is effectively distribution channels. And so that is like your website, that is Amazon, that is retail, wholesale. And you can have different channels that will have different types of merchandising. And so, maybe you're primary direct-to-consumer brand and your website is your primary channel. And so maybe your secondary channel is Amazon, and you strategically withhold some inventory from Amazon, some products from Amazon, because maybe you want to use it as a clearance mechanism. Maybe you want to, have 1 or 2 bestsellers on Amazon, but you want to, funnel people to search your website, and then you can get that customer data when they make a purchase. And so that's a merchandising decision, right? What you have strategically in in your store. So Cody, you're launching a whole bunch of stores now. Maybe you have all your products in there. Maybe you don't. I don't know, but you don't have like this endless, the luxury of like an endless category and scroll like you do on your website. So maybe you strategically withhold some products for whatever reason, or you're just limited in space due to whatever like retail space you can acquire. But it's not only channels, right? It's markets. And so, a good example is I don't think, Connie, both Connors, right? You don't have aprons in Australia and you don't have luggage in Australia. Cody, you don't ship to Australia. And so that's a merchandising decision, right? And sometimes that's like a conscious decision, and other times that is a decision based upon like what you're allowed to do. I'll give you an example. So at the Oodie, we had licensing partnerships with like Disney, Marvel, Warner Brothers, etc., Pokemon, like world-class brands, right? And Disney would not allow us to have the license for North America, for US and Canada. We couldn't get the license for that. So we didn't have distribution rights for North America. However, we did have it for Australia, New Zealand, and the UK, I think. And so that's like a forced merchandising decision, right? And so we have to think about what other, while we're promoting these product launches in like Southern Hem and UK, what are we doing Northern Hem during that period of time? So it's like the place part of, and then the last P is promotion. And this is probably what in ecom land we're probably used most to, which is like, what is our go-to-market strategy for new product launches or existing launches? What is our marketing mix? What channels are we gonna launch with these new product launches? What's our messaging, positioning? What are we having in our creative? Is it a single hero shot for this new launch? Or are we showing like variety? We're showing product breadth for like the apron launch. How are we like visualizing that in the creative? It's not just the creative strategy just isn't about the hook. It's about what products we're showing in the creative. It's about the creative on your website. So the product images. And like what are the variants? Connor, you mentioned a few weeks ago that you just launched video on your product images of Hexclad. That's a merchandising decision. That's a visual merchandising decision, right? And then you have like the typical search, merch, and personalization. So search is like, well, what products are we displaying when someone searches? How are we matching synonyms or misspellings? How are we merchandising our collections? Is there like an algorithmic way to merchandise those collections, or are you got someone manually putting there? You've got some rule-based collections. Is the nav menu, is it A to Z, or is it best sellers down? What categories are we having, and the collections underneath that? And then we have like CRO. So CRO is visual merchandising, right? Now it's called CRO, but it's really just visual merchandising. When you think about it like a retail store perspective, it's just visual merchandising, right? It's like reducing friction to purchase and making sure that the customer can find what products they need, and search, merch, and personalization kind of does that. So that's the recommendation engine underneath as well, right? The similar products, the cart recommendations. After sell, that's a merchandising decision, right? You've actively decided what products are going to be in that, when someone has purchased. Are you clearing products, or are you cross-selling products? Your email, merchandising decision, why you have some categories in there and some categories you don't. So that's like how I think about merchandising. It's full funnel. Usually a merchandiser or the product team are responsible for like product, pricing, and place, and then marketing, as we think about it, is responsible for the promotion part.
Yeah, totally. And that's what I ask. It almost sounds like a silly question, right? Like, how has the D2C industry adopted like the merchandising role? But there's something weird about it where like most of the things that you described, it's full stack. Most brands I talk to don't have a formal merchandising role. So therefore that full stack and all those decisions are like some weird amalgamation of different stakeholders. Where like I'm choosing promotion and Sean's choosing category expansion, and our design team our product team is choosing price. And it's like, there are certain like times where like that all comes together in like a really coherent way, and like we ultimately launch, but like there hasn't historically been like a pure owner through like the whole funnel. And that's what I think is super interesting. Then I'll talk to apparel brands, and I feel like this is probably where your depth of knowledge comes from, where like they need it dialed. You need inline, out of line plans, you need category expansion, you need newness every year. It's a very seasonal business. So all this stuff gets dialed. But if you're selling black gunmetal and carbon fiber wallets for 11 years, like we could get pretty far without it. But as we've introduced newness, it's been like it's a big learning opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, some like you mentioned fashion. The fashion industry is entirely run by merchandisers, really. Like where your inventory turnover, you don't have core. Number one, it is forced seasonality. So it gets cold, you wear warm clothes. It gets hot, you wear clothes that are shorter or whatever. Like you have this forced newness, right? And so you're entirely reliant upon the quality of how much breadth and depth you have, and also the quality of your product team, right? How good are they at designing? It is just a completely different game rather than having a lot of predictability that comes with the benefits of a core range, which you just don't really have a lot of that in fashion. So yeah, it's a different game, but I'll spend some time in both. But I definitely cut my teeth a lot better in the fashion part. But there's lots of learnings that you can bring to non-fashion brands as well.
Yeah, cool. So I imagine a lot of people listening are running digital brands, and I think a lot of us, maybe at least Connor and I, really think about it from like a site merchandising and visualization standpoint. And this just came up internally, so I'm being very selfish asking. But like Connor, when you guys are figuring out how to structure the site, what are you looking at, and how are you making that decision, and who are the stakeholders that are involved in that? So what do the most successful brands have in common? They have great profit margins. They're lean businesses. They're actually making money. This is something the D2C industry didn't do for a really long time. And number two, they have a brand that consumers love. Now, what if I told you that you could achieve both using AI? The team at Richpanel has developed an AI that can significantly reduce your support staff while providing memorable customer service. So you can reduce costs while ensuring that consumers continue to love your brand. So here's how it works. The AI imports data from your existing help desk and uses this information to train itself. This entire process takes less than a day. Afterwards, it begins to automate numerous tasks, thereby reducing customer response times. We just switched to Richpanel at Ridge. We had been on customer. I didn't feel we had a modern stack for our customer experience team. What we're looking forward to doing is a number of things I just mentioned. We're going to reduce headcount. We're going to offer a better customer experience. We're going to make information more readily available to the consumers that are looking for it. And we think Richpanel is a great tool to do that. So the best aspect of the transition was its simplicity. We were ready to go live in 2 weeks with no data loss. Our team of 30 agents were quickly onboarded. And thanks to Richpanel's tutorial videos and user-friendly interface, it was all very seamless. If you're looking to leverage AI to save on support, payroll, and deliver a customer service experience that your customers will truly appreciate, check out richpanel.com and schedule a demo with their team.
Yeah, so we'll often do we want to build a bunch of awareness right when we drop these products. So we're often doing like a complete hero section homepage takeover. So in that process, that's very heavily involved with our head of content, who will go and produce this hero hype reel style of video that will take over the homepage for, call it 2 weeks. And then the goal is that by the time so that's going to be there and support all of the initial campaign launches, right? Especially if this is a retention driven product, which all of our products we're trying to sell to our existing customer base. And then some of them will also build acquisition funnels around. But the goal is that by the time that this hero video comes down, we basically have all of our lifecycle marketing built out around that product. So it's all right, we have this big campaign blast strategy for 3 to 4 weeks, and then we remove that hero video, go back to evergreen. But at this point, now the big promotion that's gonna be happening is just in an ongoing evergreen way. It's all right, we launched aprons, we have this aprons hero video, we do a bunch of campaigns. Okay, now 3 weeks later, we go back to evergreen hero video, and then people have the opportunity. So now at this point, we've added aprons to our general cross-sell flow. Hopefully we have our product-specific cross-sell flow built out. So as we continue to acquire people on our hero products that are not the aprons, we'll get them not necessarily in market for aprons, but we'll make them aware of aprons. So when they are in market, hopefully they're coming back to our product. So that's the overall launch strategy and how we get into a sustained strategy. And then we go into where does this live in our navigation, right? So is this a level 1 breadcrumb? Is it a level 2 breadcrumb? And I say that in terms of in a nav, level 1, the first thing you click on, then you click on something, it brings up that next category. So what are the decisions there? Tyson, you talked about this in that level 2 breadcrumb. How do we order that? Do we push them to sets first, or individual product first, or collection page, or best sellers? Thinking through where these new products fit within your overall navigation. And then we go into the actual, is this an acquisition product or not, right? So now we're talking about all the things you talked about with angles and product value prop focus versus breadth focus. We have a little bit of both going on right now. If you go look at our ad library, what are the channels that we're marketing on? So the aprons, for example, was, arguably the biggest launch we've had so far from an overall channel perspective, right? We developed streaming TV creative, YouTube TV creative, paid social creative, and all the retention tactics, campaign launches, lifecycle marketing, post-purchase flows. We're developing a landing page for it. The apron's a totally different product category for us. So it required a ton of different new elements, like a new collection page design, new product page design. So that was very cross-functional. I mean, that involved, head of advertising, director of paid media creative, head of website, myself, director of retention, obviously the product director who leads all things product dev and go to market. Like that was arguably the most cross-functional new product development we've had to go after. Other products are a lot less. Like we just launched a splatter screen. The only thing that we really did for the splatter screen was built out 3 campaigns or 2 to 3 campaigns announcing it. We built out a campaign block. So it's not all about that, but like every so often we'll input this like, hey, new splatter screens product into a campaign that's not about splatter screens. And then the only thing we had to do on the upsell, aside from building the product page, of course, was added as an upsell on the website was added as an upsell on products that it made sense on. So, we kind of have this checklist that is like all encompassing. And then depending on the breadth, it's, like the splatter screen, 90% of that checklist was marked as not required in our project management board, whereas the aprons was, the whole onslaught of all these channels. And we basically have this kind of ongoing template that we're always updating as we add in new tactics. And that's like the thorough run through we do, at least as it pertains to our go-to-market for all these products. And it's just a matter of, what the breadth is of that product and how well it fits into existing funnels, or if we have to build out new funnels for it.
Is that like part of a playbook? So how I classify this is like a tier A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3 playbook. Or maybe tier A playbook is like, all right, it gets the full suite of everything. It's new funnels, it's like new creatives, it's that, and like maybe a C is like, all right, it gets uploaded to the website as like it's a new color, it gets uploaded, maybe there's an email, but like
that's how we do things for sure. We like tier them A, B, and C, and completely have templates like that.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, like A+ would be acquisition, retention, full channel active, like that's aprons. Maybe like an A- is acquisition and retention, but only paid social activation on acquisition. Tier B would be retention only, and then tier C would be mainly focused on retention, but just upsell type product that fits into existing funnels.
Yeah. Who decides that? Is that based on product? Is that like, who decides that, right? Is that based on inventory depth?
So that's my question too, specifically around aprons. I got my dad an apron, and I got him a Headley and Bennett apron. So I'm sorry about that. I forgot you guys were making a push. Otherwise, I'd be a devout HexClad apron buyer. I know, dude. No ridge ring, no HexClad apron. I'm like,
no Jones Road, probably.
Yeah, no Jones Road either. But that's my question, because aprons I could see as like tier C. Put them up, see what happens. You know what I mean? But like you guys very much took a tier A approach, and like what was the decision making like behind that?
Yeah. So we have this overall initiative as a company to really make a push towards becoming not a pots and pans brand, but a kitchenware brand. And really we want to own the whole kitchen. And in my opinion, and in the opinion of a lot of people at HexClad, the only way we'll ever really do that is if we can bring people in on non-cookware products. Like if someone comes in and they buy the 12-piece set or the 6-piece set or whatever, they're probably always going to subconsciously think of us as whatever they first bought, right? Like if you bought pots and pans, then we're probably a pots and pans brand in your head. If you bought the pepper grinder or the apron on your first order, well, now we're starting to diversify into less of a pots and pans brand into more of a true kitchenware brand, which is ultimately what we want. And I really look at like the aprons, for example, I look at that the same way I look at like our rollout in the Asian markets. We have absolutely zero awareness in like Japan, in China, in South Korea. Yet we've still decided to like roll out in Japan. That is a like 10+ year investment and bet that we will catch steam and build brand awareness and be way ahead of other brands in markets that have massive TAMs. But we're not expecting that to be like major profit drivers for the next decade. It's going to take a lot of time. Aprons is similar, right? Like we have no brand equity in aprons. Everyone sees us as a pots and pans brand. But we've made a really awesome apron. We're all super proud of the quality of the product. And again, we want to become a kitchenware brand, not just a pots and pans brand. So we've basically made the strategic decision to say, hey, we need to start investing in it. It's going to be a slow burn. It's not going to be as profitable as, our 12-piece set funnels, but that's okay. We know that we need to invest here and it's going to take time and we're comfortable with that. So that's been like the overall thought process. And it does have the margin profile that we're all confident can, become a successful acquisition product that, at least to an extent, is driven by paid media, at least from the jump.
Totally. Yeah, I love it. I love just like being apparel, like as close as you're gonna get to apparel for a kitchenware brand, I think is really rad. Like just getting to show more people more lifestyles. You all of a sudden have logos that are like forward facing, which I think is cool just from a brand and creative perspective.
It's exciting to start to build these, like, we're starting to like think about analytics for all these different business units, right? Like traditionally we've been, fully focused on cookware and like the 12-piece and 6-piece set for our acquisition funnels. And now we're starting to think through, okay, well now that we're starting to acquire people on knives, on aprons, on hex mills, on these different product categories, like we need to build these dashboards to track performance over time. So it's like overall blended business performance, but now cookware is its own, aprons is its own, hex mills is its own, and we're tracking those individual business units, month over month over month to see, all right, well, where's CAC trending? Where's our traffic trending? We're starting to measure for our influencer team. I'm giving them key results that are like impressions per product category, so we can start to measure those over time. And that's like what I'm really enjoying right now, is thinking through like what's the analytics stack to like understand how aprons is trending. Because like, yes, I'm not expecting aprons to be profitable right away, but we need to be obviously trending in the right direction, right? Like traffic needs to be going up, CAC needs to be coming down over time, in-platform metrics need to be improving. We need to be getting more impressions on these products with influencers. So that's been really fun recently, is like to expand outside of cookware and start to think through like, what's the overall dashboards that we're setting up and what are the key results we're working towards to ensure that, this big picture goal is being trended towards, because it's not just going to happen just from putting it on your site and having an easy to navigate to product page like that. If you build it, they will come is certainly not applicable in e-commerce, right? Like you got to be doing marketing to build that product and to build performance around it. So been working on that with my team a lot. It's been a lot of fun to like kind of rethink starting from scratch again in these new product categories.
Yeah, so I think that's a really cool one. And I want to get it to Cody here, talking about category expansion. Like something that came up in a conversation I had recently was around like financial projections, or just like, financial projections, revenue goals by category, something a little bit more granular than like top line. Cody, how are you guys thinking about that at Jones Road? Do you have any sort of breakouts in revenue between different product types?
No, we don't really. Like we think about it. We're definitely adding and launching, new products. A lot of them are, we measure it. I don't think we have like very specific goals. We obviously have forecasts for them based on demand plan, but we don't totally, break it out or like look at them as separate business units. I think there's pros and cons, and I really like it. Like we should have Alejandro from and Bo on, because I know that you mentioned him earlier, and like I know that they look at things as like separate business units. You can have like different creative strategists on them, which is really interesting. No, we don't, and I think there's pros and cons. But then when you start to do that, and you've got like a head of skincare, a head of cosmetics, stuff like that, then it's kind of like everyone's competing and fighting for resources. And the way I've tried to set things up is like, I want the decision makers to care about the overall team rather than one category. And I think you can kind of get, you've got to make sure your culture is right and you've got the right people, so people don't just get incentivized by their one department. And I think because, our decision makers are across multiple departments and overseeing everything, we're able to just kind of focus on what we think is best for the overall business. And so I think we have like a unique org structure, but I think it works for us because we're really trying to align the incentives together. Like just in general, like to your earlier question about like who does merchandising, like I actually met with, if you guys know, like Nate Poulin, like Digitally Native on Twitter, when I wanted to learn forecasting, he shared like how they did it at Bonobos. And like, I think some of these things it's a great question, like who does this at your org? And I think that the thing that stuck with me, because they were like apparently within like 2% of their forecast. And it's like the pinnacle, I know he's talked about like the kind of gold standard of like these organizations is like the fashion companies that have a catalog, because that forces you to be so dialed in with your forecast and your merchandising and these long lead cycle, marketing campaigns. But just it kind of just stuck with me because at the time I met with him, like I was really struggling with like working with like ops, and we had like a COO/CFO, and like it just the incentives weren't necessarily aligned with marketing, and there were inventory issues and just different goals. And it just really stuck with me how it's not just a question of this is who's in charge of it, but more of like this is like a triangulation and just like the interplay between these departments, between ops, between finance, between whether it's, marketing, whether it's merchandising, like whatever you call it at your org. And so for us, it's not one person, but it's myself and the chief product officer. And, we work super closely together. Like, for example, we just had to switch out some of our holiday offerings. And so, she knew what was available, what we have stock of, she knew what was created, but she kind of came to me and we decided on it together of what we had to switch out. And I obviously am looking at it from a revenue and margin perspective, and she's looking at it from, product development and inventory perspective. But I just think getting that C-suite, the leadership team, to really work together and have like shared incentives is like the most important thing, in my opinion. And I think that's where you can probably go wrong if you're trying to just have a decision maker who's like, finance wants this, ops wants this, marketing wants this, and like having those different ones. So it's for us as a collaboration, even coming down to like what upsells we're putting on their site. Like I can't just go and like I own site, I own visual merchandising of site, but I can't just go and switch it because it's going to have like what upsells we're putting on our PDPs. It's going to have implications on our inventory if we switch it. Like we've seen as we switch stuff out there, it like totally affects things. So we just have to work lockstep and work very collaboratively. And I don't want to think of it as like it's my decision or it's hers. It's like that's just the teamwork nature and the collaboration, which I think is best for the overall business unit.
Yeah, and you're spot on about the forecast, Cody, because there's really three forecasts, right? There's like a merch forecast or ops forecast, but let's call it the merch forecast. And every department has gaps in their own forecast, right? And so merch is going to forecast in like SKUs, units, collections, and categories, right? And then you have like finance, also like gross margin, and like when they might do markdowns, etc. Finance, 13-week cash flow, right? So they're not looking at SKUs, and marketing is cohorts, right? Cohorts, channel investment, and like contribution dollars. And so every team should do the exercise of forecasting for their own like respective department, and that is different for whatever reasons, and everyone should come together like once for the final forecast, like once a month or whatever, and then just like sense check it all the time. And so you just want to be like, okay, so merch is like, okay, well, we got these products coming in, we've got this product lineup coming in like 6 months. Marketing, are you aware that we're going to make, we've bought deep into it. It's going to be a new category, new hero category. We bought deep into it. So therefore you need to readjust what you're doing 6 months from now. And you go, okay, well, I need to think about how I invest in these channels. And I need to like think about how that is going to impact, customer acquisition efforts, etc. And so everyone's kind of forecast like feeds off each other and should kind of align in some way.
I just couldn't agree anymore. And like, you can just tell that you know what you're doing and have been around the block, because it sounds so simple, but it's like, it's such an important, but it's such an important ingredient for running a successful organization. Especially probably it gets more important as you have more SKUs and things get more complex, but it's everything in my opinion.
So I'll talk about another conversation we've had internally around like when to buy deep on a new collection. And I think you've talked about this a little bit, Tyson, so I'd love your take. But there's obviously this balance of like, if you have a winner, if you have a design that you think is great, like you want to buy deep into it so you can scale it, but you put yourself at risk that it's not the success that you think it is. And now you have a bunch of like low sell-through inventory that you've got to worry about for completely different reasons. We've talked maybe about like continuing with kind of our rapid product iteration, but buying lighter, identifying winners, and then like relaunching or chasing inventory after we find it. I'm curious if you have any like best practices or strategies that you've implemented at Oodie or maybe another example.
Yeah. So in terms of, let's go back to like when these decisions are made, right? So a merchandiser or the product team, they've worked with the CEO and like aligned with marketing. So it starts with like an alignment as like, we have bought into this product for some reason, whether that be that this is where the market is trending, or this is like a new category that is obvious for us, so we're going to expand it, and we're going to buy deep. But what does deep mean really? Now, I'm not a merchandiser, I'm not an inventory planner, so I just want to throw that out there. I'm just a marketer. And what it means is that there is an expectation set that we are going to make a significant investment, and the holy grail is like this just-in-time inventory concept, right? So you have like just enough inventory for like lead time and production. So for example, let's say you got 1,000 units of inventory. Your sell-through is like 20 units a week. So you got like five weeks. 100 units, 20 units a week, you got 5 weeks sell through, yeah? And production lead time is like 5 weeks. And so the challenge with that is like, well, nothing better happen when you order that and everything better go right. But that's like inventory efficiency. And of course, we know things can go wrong, right? Lead times, etc. Factories, timelines change, on water times change, whatever that reason might be. And so there are trade-offs, right? But in terms of how you think about like inventory, it's a merchandising decision, right? So how I would think about it is I always think about risk, right? And so it's like, how can we de-risk the inventory position whereby you have low inventory in categories that you want to test, and maybe it takes off, right? And then you go, okay, it's taken off a bit, then we go and do the big buy, and then like we kind of have a bit more to push it harder, rather than just like doing this massive buy to start with and be like, all right, we don't know how much we're going to sell because we haven't launched it yet, and now we're not selling much, and we've got like a year's worth of inventory, and so it's always like, how can we de-risk the buy? And then but it should be expectations set from the beginning, right? Like this is a tier 1 launch, right? We have a tier 1 launch. We know we're gonna these marketing activities are associated with this tier 1 launch. We're going to see how it goes, and maybe it sells out, right? And then selling out is good because then you can go, oh, so we had so much demand, we sold out. But really, all that meant is we just didn't do a massive buy for it. But we got enough to gauge. And I don't think, I think if you do launch, I don't think your existing customer list is a good way to gauge how well the product is going to do, right? Because you can say like you have like a few hundred, new wallets, right? And maybe you do an email and you just sell out. And you're like, okay, well, that's an awesome product, but really, can you acquire customers with that product? That is a real question. Can you acquire new customers with that? And doing just the email is kind of like a false gauge on that, because you've got a bunch of loyal customers who are going to buy like whatever. We learned this is the Oodie, right? So we learned whatever pattern that we put on an Oodie, we can sell, right? But that doesn't, to our email list, it doesn't matter. And because we operate with such a long tail, the Oodie has such a long tail of designs, right? So you have like people like dogs, people like cats, people like Disney, people who like, just something that relates to them, that it's kind of like them buying a pattern that relates to their interest or who they feel they are like as a person. And so such a long tail. And so, you can fall into that trap as well. And fashion has this problem, right? So fashion has this problem where, they have a depth versus breadth problem, where it's like, how deep do we buy, and like how wide do we go? And I think Shein has really taken this approach to its like maximum, whereby the way I understand it, like how Shein operates is they have a few, all their suppliers either buy 100-200 SKUs or whatever, and they just see what pops, and then whatever pops, they start to produce more of that. And it's like kind of like this, black swan approach to like merchandising, right? You're just like, oh, that is like the power law goes over to this product. We're just gonna like, massively produce that. But yes, so there's a lot of problems in this approach, and it also goes upon like, how do you think about structuring your ad accounts, for example? And like, do you structure it for like at the category level? And because you need the ability to kind of flex up and down. You need the ability to have control over where your dollars are spent, not just at the channel level, right? Not just at the marketing channel level, but at the category level for whatever it is you're selling. So all of a sudden, like, you might have 100 products in this collection, and maybe shoes go out of stock, or not even shoes go out of stock, right? Maybe you have like a bell curve of different sizes of shoes, right? And so you've got like the low size of shoes and like the larger shoe sizes, and all the middle go out of stock, right? But shoes are that shoe is like still the best selling shoe. It's the best sellers, but because of the size change in what is available. It is now not the best-selling shoe, but it's still merchandised up the top of your collection, right? And so now you have this problem where the conversion rate in your entire category is going to tank because the only the small and large sizes, the non-desirable sizes, are available, and so that affects like your targets, like in-platform targets. And so you have to have the ability to kind of dial up and dial down, whether that's from a marketing spend perspective or whether that's for like changing your cost cap or your bid cap. You just have to have the ability to like, how are we doing? Okay, conversion rates tanked. We're out of stock of these products. Let's like crank up the cost cap or crank down the spend. And structuring for control, right? And then having the data visualization in place so you can see that in like real time, whether it's like daily or weekly. You can see the changes in behavior of your categories, of your category revenue, or what units are moving. So then you need to like flex up and down, like the system. It's like a living, breathing system, right? And you can't consistently have to like maintain it through various levers.
Yeah. And for those curious, the data visualization piece and the product type naming were two threads that we stole from Tyson internally, because the key to a good product type, Cody, you'll be happy to know, is a naming convention. So
let's go. The heart and soul of the D2C brand. So one of the buzzwords this year is incrementality. Last year was all about attribution. This year is all about incrementality. And I think that's a great thing, because we are all trying to grow our businesses profitably, and we want to make sure that the spend that we are putting out into market is actually is working for us. So I know that we are all Haus customers, and you guys have sought out Haus this year. What led you guys to do that? We'll start with Rich.
For us, it's all about new channels. We're in the business of reaching net new male audiences. So when we're launching across Pinterest, Twitter, Snapchat, Live Intent, etc., we use Haus to measure the total impact of those new channel experiments.
That's awesome. How about HexCloud? What are you guys looking at?
Definitely the new channels as we roll those out, but because we already had such a diversified marketing mix in terms of channels, and we were already spending at pretty high levels prior to onboarding Haus, the first batch of testing is just for us to find those optimal spend levels with our existing marketing stack, and then comparing those to one another to kind of see within our existing marketing stack, where should we bring spend down, where should we bring spend up, and really using that incremental ROAS, that incremental CAC number, to inform how we move those budgets up and down.
I love that. Yeah. And for us, the same. We've definitely tested new channels, but we've also calibrated spend on existing channels. We've saved 6 figures a month just by not running brand search, because we've ran multiple tests and it's not incremental. So I know for all of us, it's had a huge impact, and we love it, and we couldn't live without it at this point. And so if you want to be like us and want to add scientific rigor to your marketing stack, I recommend you go to haus.io/operators. That's haus.io/operators to get a demo today.
We're going to pivot. I'm going to take us to top of funnel channels. How do you want to measure awareness? How we want to measure efficacy there? So this is all about merchandising. Honestly, incredibly deep topic. We're talking about like decisions across the entire organization of a D2C brand. So we go on and on there, but we'll keep it moving. Cody, I want to pass it to you again. Well, I know both of you guys have been doing some out-of-home testing. So I have the question of like, what types of top of funnel advertising are we testing? You guys are up to a bunch of cool stuff. We just got back on linear a couple weeks ago, but other than that, nothing too exciting. Cody, you guys are doing trucks. Connor, I heard about an out-of-home plan. So Cody, why don't you kick us off, like what you guys are even thinking about from a out-of-home or just general top of funnel?
Yeah, definitely happy to share about it. Happy to get some feedback on Tyson. And Tyson, my bad, because you DM'd me and I did not reply to you, so I apologize about that. But I'm excited to. You gave me like a novel. In my defense, you gave me a novel about this, so that's why we're having you on. I'm very excited to hear kind of how you think we should think about this.
Yeah, I hope you had enough reading time. So just lay that down.
Yeah, so a few different ways. I think I was even thinking about this morning, like. We're big enough where we definitely need top of funnel spend. It's definitely valuable. We can't just go conversion optimized on everything. I don't think we're big enough where we can have reach and CPMs be the metric of success for us. And so I think the challenge just becomes how do we make sure that we're able to reach new people cost effectively, which is probably top of funnel spend, but how do we measure what we care about? And I think ultimately it comes down to buzzword of the year, incrementality, just over a longer time frame. So like our first top of funnel investment ever was meta reach campaigns. And so we launched that with Haus with the geo test. And first we did a 2-week test. That was decent. We did a 6-week test. That did well. Then a 12-week test. We actually just got some results back of another reach test that we did for Memorial Day weekend. But we're obviously looking at, is it helping us reach new people? But more importantly, is it helping us actually get more orders? And I think, in terms of there are some cool ways to measure, so we did trucks with Agile, but just even traditional out of home, like we're opening new stores. So we're going to do a lot more out of home. There are these like quasi holdout experiments that you can do. They'll essentially take some, mobile device IDs and they'll create like a control versus a hold or a treatment group, which is they'll essentially say, hey, here's all of the device IDs that were exposed to your ad, your truck, your billboard, and here is what we believe is a segment of people that were not exposed to it. I don't remember exactly how they do that. And then you can look and see, you can put a pixel on your site, you can look at store traffic, and you can kind of do this like quasi incremental test. I'm very skeptical of it. What we plan to do with Haus is also just doing it geo-based. So we're going to pick a city and we're just going to bomb it with some out of home, and we're just going to run 4 or 6 weeks, hook it up to our data warehouse with Haus, and we're going to see, more importantly, sessions, organic search, brand search, traffic, things like that. Are they elevated where you're running out of home compared to all the regions you're not? So that's how we're currently going to think about it, but definitely open to hearing what you guys are thinking.
And are you guys... You're really hoping to measure like an incremental and profitable impact. There's no like, we just want to make like a cool impression.
I want to try. I mean, I want to see if there's a way, but I don't think it's. I think it depends. If it's like a digital media kind of top of funnel, media, whether it's TV or something like that, it's kind of in that in between of performance and brand spend. Right. And so I do want to see that actually improve acquisition just over time. If it's something like out of home, I want to know it does something. It doesn't necessarily have to give me a certain CAC. I'm not going to hold it accountable to that, but I want to know it does something. So for me, that middle ground is site traffic. I'm not necessarily as concerned about, brand awareness lift, at least where we are currently at, maybe with HexCloud. But I'd love to see, hey, are more people finding out about us and then searching for us based on this?
Totally. A couple of things that come to mind I'll kick it to you, Connor, because I know you guys are doing a bunch of cool stuff. I listened to a podcast with, I forget her name, Tyler, maybe, the founder of Outdoor Voices. And she was talking about for their like big marketing moments, they would pair on something that they thought was just like novel. There's no way they were getting like a profitable incremental return. At the time I remember them doing, they worked with Little Michaela, the digital influencer was like their big thing. So you had this like avatar, like displaying the new like jockey pants or whatever Outdoor Voices was coming out with. And I was like, that's cool. And what made me think of it recently was your guys' Agile trucks with the launch of that new kit that you talked about a couple episodes ago. We're like, I didn't see a truck. I just saw you tweet about it. But I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, it's way more memorable than you tweeting a photo of like your guys' PDP or something. So I could also totally understand like the top of funnel measurement of like, let's just be a little bit more memorable to some amount of people. Not going to be a profitable CAC necessarily, but there's some balance there to strike.
For sure. Definitely agree with that. It's very hard to measure. I think there are ways, but it's definitely much harder, like you said.
Yeah. And then Connor, what are you guys testing right now?
Yeah. So that's on that note, Connor, that is very much our approach, at least somewhat. Like we will roll a lot of things out in paid social that often I'll see the ask and be like, like I don't love it, but fine. Like, let's test it. Why not? Whereas we are much more picky with our upper funnel channels. So like linear TV, streaming TV. We haven't launched out of home yet, but we're about to. We are a lot more picky and choosy and with those concepts and the creatives that are rolling out there. So like we have some really, what we're going to start with is we're going to start with some trucks. And we have some really awesome creative getting developed. We're going to roll it out in New York, and we actually have a partnership with the New York Yankees. So one of the creatives is going to be like HexCloud times the New York Yankees, which is going to be really cool. But those have gone through a lot more careful eyes. And same with our like new streaming TV concepts we're coming up with. We're working with a creative agency to develop some billboard creative and some new TVCs. Like those all have to be really spot on, great brand impressions. So we will absolutely be thinking about, impressions and CPMs with those. I was really selfishly, I was like really curious to hear what Cody had to say about measuring out of home, because like I said, we're about to launch trucks in New York City, and I figured it was some sort of like, we need to measure like a period over period lift in that market, probably. So Cody, I'm definitely going to reach out to you to get some insight into how you're setting that up.
Yeah, I'm down to share ours. I'm very skeptical of it, but I will say, like, I didn't hold it to the same rigor, because like technically we got an incremental CAC, incremental cost per site visitor. I didn't hold it to the same, rigor, because it's not that much spend. If you think about it, like, I think we spent like $10K a month on these trucks. I probably shouldn't say it, but like, I don't have to hold that to the same accountability of like our meta spend or our TV spend that, like, we're spending that in a few hours. So like, as long as I know it did something, I'm still skeptical of the amount of it, but yeah, happy to share about what we saw.
Dude, and I told you it was memorable to me. I was like, that's pretty sick.
Well, we also did this event, so I don't know if you saw that on Twitter, but one of the days we had the truck
really
pull
cool.
up, we had a line of about 800 people around the corner, and like, that helps me justify it. Like, hey, like, at least it helped us do something that is memorable, and people are lining up for it.
Yeah. One thing we're also doing with our trucks, and this is not going to be indicative of like the net channel performance, but we're basically rolling out 3 different creatives across 5 trucks to start with, and we're giving them different QR codes with different UTM'd links. So at least directionally, I'll get some insight into which creative is prompting people to like take that CTA and go to the site, which will be interesting. And maybe there's probably some like optimizations and like a better launching off point for our billboard strategy. And when we really scaled, we'd be like, oh, well, this New York Yankees creative didn't do as well as like the Gordon Ramsay, but that didn't do as well as like the straight up product oriented creative. So that'll be really interesting to see that. Other top of funnel channels, we don't do any non-conversion based like Meta or TikTok campaigns. Is all conversion based. We are gonna.
Have you tested?
Not in a like a held out way with Haus. We are planning to, but we're kind of saving that for once we get through all these budget tests, to just measure the overall incrementality of like Facebook versus streaming or Facebook versus YouTube. And basically, because like these iROASs can change so much based on the time of the year, we've basically adopted this strategy where every like channel that we're going to test, we're going to do a 2-cell alongside Facebook. So we're controlling for that time, because I just don't trust the data. If I'm doing like a Facebook incrementality test, over the next month, and then the month after that I test streaming, well, those are totally 2 different time periods. Like, just because the iROAS is better in streaming the month after doesn't mean it's actually incrementally better during that same time period. So that's how we're approaching a lot of these incrementality tests, and that's what we're going to do with our streaming TV channel. So like, in terms of measuring TV and streaming TV, it's post-purchase surveys, it's media mix modeling tools. For linear TV, we'll also measure like period over period lifts from baseline in like these strategic buys, like, hey, MLB playoff spot or NBA spot. And then with streaming, more recently, we're about to get this holdout test off the ground, which like, I'm so pumped for that, because our post-purchase survey data looks great on streaming. Our MMM loves streaming. It's like we've continued to spend more and more in it per our MMM, but I'm just so excited to get my hands on this holdout test data and really see if that's also in line with what the MMM is telling us and what the post-purchase survey is telling us. So that's the current stack, which is all very, very performance based. The one I'm just like still trying to wrap my head around, and I'm sure I will once we get it out there and start getting data, is like the billboard and like the true out of home stuff. That's just probably going to be a lot harder to connect to a purchase and to revenue.
Dude, you should ask how. So we can connect offline, but there is a way, depending on what your out of home buy is going to look like, to measure that and kind of do a geo. They call it like a quasi experiment. But yeah, also with the reach stuff, like, let me know when you're going to test that, because we've got some battle scars. We launched it 3 times because we weren't doing it properly at all. So I learned just by failure. So let me help. But let's turn it over to Tyson. I want to hear, Tyson, now that we kind of babbled about how we're looking at it, please tell us how wrong we are. How do you think we should be thinking about it? Measuring this kind of upper funnel stuff.
Also, if there's any differences per channel, right? Like billboard versus linear TV versus streaming TV versus Facebook reach campaigns. Like, I'm sure there's different methodologies that are, more optimal on a per channel / like campaign objective basis.
Yeah, absolutely. the challenging thing about measurement, right, is every way to measure has its own limitations, right? And so, kind of know you like analogies, so I'll give one for you. So, I recently 3 months ago, I dislocated my shoulder. Right, I dislocated my left shoulder. I was at a heavy metal concert, front row, and crowd surfer fell on top of me, and I tried to hold him up, and everyone else around me kind of didn't, and I just kind of brought the weight of him fully.
God, I want to hang out with Tyson on a Saturday night. Let's go,
dude. Epic anecdote. Yeah, sick.
And,
all right, loving the analogy.
And yeah, so and I just kind of went in and out very quickly, and I was like, oh, that's a bit unusual. That's never happened before. But so anyway, fly back to Adelaide. Go to the doctor, and they're like, okay, so first thing we need to do is an X-ray. And of course, you start with an X-ray because you want to look at there's broken bones. You want to look at the shoulders back in place. But the thing about an X-ray is it won't tell you if there's any ligament damage or tendon damage. Okay, so that's like that's a bit like the measurement problem, right? Is every single tool has its own way to visualize. If you're doing an MRI, if you go on a 12 week checkup for your baby, you don't get an X-ray, right? You get like you get there's another scan for that, right? I forget the name of it, but ultrasound. That's the one. You get an ultrasound, right? So there are different types of tools dependent upon how to look at the body differently, and it's just like in marketing, right? So there's a bunch of tools. We can click-based attribution modeling isn't good for TV or radio. It's going to show it's going to show lower funnel demand capture activities if there is direct traffic might increase, or like maybe remarketing might increase, or paid search campaigns spend might increase. But and so same with marketing mix modeling, it's correlation. It's not causation. So you have this gap. It's like historic data, and maybe that model might be wrong. But with Haus, it's like correlation, right? It's I guess the truth. Yeah, it's I guess the main source of truth. But and it's the same with like TV, right? So let's talk about I guess this measurement this like thread that I wrote about how to think about measuring. So the question was, Cody, you mentioned like how do we quantify in market demand from top of funnel awareness activities, right? And so straight away, these are people that haven't purchased yet, right? These are people that are maybe in market and they have not yet taken an action to purchase. So straight away, you basically have every you can't use click-based data because no one might have come to your website. You can't use market mix modeling because maybe you put spend in there, but you can't fully see it. And yeah, you can do a holdout test, but maybe those are like the majority of people haven't converted yet. So it's like, how long to do the holdout test for, right? And so this isn't a framework that I came up with. It's something that I know lots of people in Australia are using. It's a New Zealand tool called Tracksuit, and I'm not like a paid or whatever to do this, but I just like the tool. I think it's the best.
We got to get you paid though. How do we get you paid? Are they listening?
Yeah, we'll see. But so the concept, the framework is like you have like your TAM, your total addressable market, right? And within your TAM, there are two distinct segments, you can call it. One is like in market demand, and in market demand is like it's changing over time. It's variable. It depends upon seasonality. It depends, maybe you have more in market demand in Q4 than you do in Q3. And so it's variable, and there's competitors kind of fighting for like the conversion, right? And so we know all the best channels to scale with that. It's like demand capture channels, like Google search. It's like Facebook, meta conversion, etc. Like all the performance marketing channels, right? Are best at like trying to acquire in market demand, and you can call that like the behavioral targeting channels. And then you have the other part of like the TAM, which I'd call like the potential category buyers, and this is everyone who is in your category. So Cody, that is like all women, or maybe you can narrow that down to like everyone who is like likes your type of likes the specific subcategory that Jones wrote in, or like Connor, both Connors, it's like people who like everyday carry and luggage and cookware, or people. So like that is like your total addressable market. Is the makeup of in-market demand and potential category buyers. And then it becomes, okay, so if we advertise via TV, how do we then quantify who is like who is likely to be in market, and what leading indicators could we use. And so there's this concept of a prompted brand survey by this tool called Tracksuit. They are they use like survey from a company called Dynata, which is like an always on brand survey. So prompted brand survey is, you get an email you've signed up for and you've registered interest in like the specific category, and they go, okay, are you aware of these 5 brands, 1, 2, 3, or 5? And you click yes. Yes, I'm aware of Hexclad. And then the next question would be, out of these 5 brands, which one would you consider buying from, right? And you're like, oh, yeah, I'd consider buying from Hexclad. And so what it does is it tracks in real time, like as these surveys start to come in, and like the first one they do like 1,000 surveys, the surveys start to come in and updates. Okay, so maybe have a 10% of people in the US are aware of your brand, and within the category are aware of your brand, and then out of that maybe like 5 to 6% people. Like 5% would consider buying from you. And so from there, so you have like a baseline, right? You have like a benchmark. And from there, like every month they do the prompted brand survey, and as the survey results start to come in, you kind of see the changes in awareness and consideration. They have some other ones as well, purchase and usage. And then you kind of say, okay, so if we do these marketing activities, how does that change our awareness, and how does that change our consideration? So let's say we invest like 100,000 in a TV campaign, and maybe we isolate it to one region, and then after that TV campaign, we see awareness go up from like 10% to 11%. So we see like a 10% awareness bump. But more importantly, if we use consideration as a proxy metric for like in demand or in market, we can say, okay, well, consideration raised from 5% to 6%. So we had 20% lift increase in consideration. Now, while that doesn't mean that those people may buy, is like the importance of top of funnel activities should be what's called creating mental availability. And it's just a fancy term for saying when someone is in market to buy, we want to be part of their consideration set. Okay, so maybe they're not in market for like 1 to 3 months, and that might be a typical time to like first purchase. When they become in market, we want to be one of a very small few brands that they have as part of their consideration set. And every category is different. So on average, anyone, when they are ready to buy, they have on average maybe 3 different brands that they would consider buying from. And so it's just a matter of getting ahead and making an emotional connection with a potential future customer. So when they are in the market to buy, we are part of their consideration set. And then Tracksuit just provides a way to quantify like how we go in awareness and consideration. And then, like you said, you look at post-purchase data, you go, okay, well, we did this advertising campaign maybe 3 months ago. And then like we're starting to see a bump in like 1 to 3 months. And so with them, we can like tie that back to like, okay, we did this big advertising campaign, and most people are self-reporting TV. That probably had an effect. And so like in marketing mix modeling, there's a concept of ad stock where it's like the decrease kind of looks like a retention curve, right? It's like the decrease of like when like the effectiveness of the ad. And so TV has like the longest like ad stock effect, and like paid search is like straight away, like it's effective straight away because you are searching for it. And so for me, it just provides another way to understand the marketing activity, which is in this case how are we quantifying top of funnel demand, how are we like quantifying in market demand from top of funnel activities. And it's just another way. Just like share of search. Well, share of search is another example where it's like the total searches for our brand divided by total searches for the category. And maybe your share of searches are increasing in your category, and your competitor's share of search is decreasing as a percentage. And so therefore you can go, okay, well our in-market demand is increasing due to our marketing activities. And also our market share is increasing as well. And so share of search is like a proxy metric for market share. If you increase your share of search, you'll increase your market share as well. So there's just some other areas that I think through when trying to quantify these harder to quantify channels, like people who haven't purchased it. How do you quantify people who haven't purchased it, right? Like list growth might be one thing. But yeah, so that's just another tool in the box to kind of think about that.
So if you're a CMO, a head of growth, a paid media lead in today's e-commerce ecosystem, you know how hard media mix can be. You know how hard it can be to sift through all the data and make the decision of what percentage of spend you want to put into each channel. So, last click based attribution is great, but they often undervalue view channels. Incrementality holdout testing is great, but that often takes, weeks and months to get that data back. And you might take 4, 5, 6 months to have comparable data across all your channels. Enter Prescient AI. Prescient AI is AI-powered marketing mix model. So basically what Prescient does, it measures and forecasts the true daily value of your paid media campaigns with incredible accuracy. And it really gives you the confidence to scale and put your budget where you think it's best put and what's optimizing that ad spend. So basically with Prescient, you're gaining AI-powered insight into the impact of your paid media, including hard-to-measure campaigns on TikTok, YouTube, influencer, and connected TV campaigns, on your e-commerce revenue, including Amazon. I cannot emphasize how important this is. It's one of my favorite parts of the tool. Prescient's super easy to install. There are no pixels, so you have just super quick access to past, present, and future data in hours, not weeks, not months, in hours. You start getting models outputted, and these are all unique to your brand. They're trained and they're back tested on your data. And what Prescient does that I have not seen other MMM tools do is that they actually give you optimizations down to the campaign. It's not just how much you should put in Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, but they're actually giving you, saying, hey, this campaign in Facebook is better than this one. You should put more budget here, which is really cool. We use it at Hexclad. It's used by other top brands like Good American, Cozy Earth, Timbuktu, Nude, and dozens more. It's one of the fastest growing e-com, tech, MMM tools in the game right now. So if you want to check them out, book a demo today at prescient-ai.io/operators. That is prescient-ai.io/operators. Prescient AI, helping brands scale spend confidently with AI-powered marketing mix models.
I'm super interested because we haven't done any surveys like that. So I'm super interested. Question for you. Is there anything causal? Like, for example, it would be great to say, hey, it went up this quarter. You went from 2 to 4% awareness. But, obviously there are so many potential factors that could, go into that rather than like isolating a geo lift or anything like that. So is there anything like kind of causal that would help you tie it back to a specific channel or a specific program, or kind of just more correlational?
Yeah, it's more correlational, to be honest. And the Prompted Brand Survey tracks every month, and it's updated real time as people fill in this survey data. And so, I mean, it just provides more confluence to like, is this thing that we're doing working or not, where we might have a hard time quantifying. And so I would use it as a tool, and then I would also look at other things like, okay, well, are we running this with like a geolift test as well? And so maybe we're seeing some like positive results from that, and our survey data is saying this as well, and our like post-purchase survey data is kind of saying a similar thing. So it's just, it just adds confluence to decision making. But it's correlation, right? And we all know the issues, potential issues with survey, people reporting wrong, or there's all these issues with survey data. But for me, it's the best way that I think allows you to quantify future demand. So an example might be, we have a focus on Q3, and we saw our consideration metrics go up, and so therefore it might help us plan for how big we go in Q4.
For sure. And that was kind of like the original, quick question that led you messaging me. It's like, based on what we've spent already, this top of funnel spend, like we believe it will create ultimately that awareness spend will ultimately create consideration and then conversions during a peak moment, but we just don't know how much of that is actually gonna, come around. And so that's your strategy to kind of pinpoint it.
Yeah. One of few. You can never get it right, but it's always like, how can we get some visibility into it?
Right.
I'd argue some visibility is better than absolutely no visibility. And I'm also not saying that everyone should go out and run these prompted brand surveys. I think they make sense when you're at a certain size and a certain level, and that's different for every market. Like if you're in Australia, we're like 26, 27 million people. You reach your maximum like in market demand a lot quicker than you do in the US. So maybe at a certain size, that that makes more sense to like go more upper funnels, do TV and radio than it does at the speed that you do in the US. And New Zealand's different, like 5 million population. You're going to exhaust your market demand a lot quicker that way as well. And so you have to move kind of up the funnel again. So I'm definitely not saying that this is what you should do, but if you are doing it, it just adds another way to add confluence to your decision making.
Right. Google and Facebook, we've worked with reps there that like run similar programs. And at least for Meta, we could tie it to like an incrementality test. So if we wanted to like hold out a certain number of, they do it at the user level, it's not geo level, but they'll split that out and then we'll run brand surveys in both and look at like an incremental considered person, which I think is really cool. Cody, you said earlier, are you guys feeding site visitors in the house and looking at cost per incremental visitor?
We are not currently. We're in the process. We actually have our first data hire starting next week. But when we first onboarded with Haus, we just hooked up Shopify. But yeah, you can hook up a warehouse as well. And so I've been told at least that if it's anything that you can get geolocation data on, you can ultimately feed that in, or we can do our own analysis on it. So that's the plan. I'll let you know how it works.
I love the prompted survey data. Like I said, we've ran it with a couple platforms. It's not on an ongoing basis. It's frankly not a data point that we'll often speak to. We'll look at like brand queries. I like the idea of cost per incremental visitor. That makes sense. Like, are just people searching for you? Are they coming to the site? Are they looking around? Like, I don't actually care about revenue. It's just like, are we creating someone to like driving someone to take an action? I think is valuable insight that like is surprisingly hard to track. Most brands are really just looking at like directly attributed visitors and attributed conversions and not trying to figure out like what is the net new interest that you're driving.
Tyson, I wanted to ask you this because we do use Tracksuit and we measure a lot of these metrics over time, and they're very interesting to track and see like how they change every 3, 6, 12 months. One thing I also love about it, and we had a really hard time quantifying this before, but Tracksuit gives you an estimated total people in your category in the market. So like if you're like, God, what's my TAM here?
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's really cool. And like to be able to go in and say, okay, well, we've had this many orders all time. Here's what Tracksuit tells us our TAM is. And it kind of gives you a sense of like when you might start to see that diminishing curve. But the question I wanted to ask you, so like you're basically saying this is just another like tool in your kind of like attribution quiver, right? With us, like we have a very long consideration period. So if I was gonna go and say, hey, we want to go spend $1 million on TV over the course of 3 months, like the chances that we're also, you really have to control a single variable, right? To be confident that, okay, that $3 million spent over 3 months, and then the 3 months following, we saw an increase in consideration, let's say from, 20% to 28%. Like, the only real way I can like attribute that directly to that increase in TV spend is if I'm also not, cranking up Facebook or out of home or TikTok or all these other channels over time, right? Yeah. So do you have any advice on that part? Like, how are you, like, because just like obviously brands are making, like we change our media mix every month based on what our models tell us to do. So, our spend's always changing. All these channel spends are always changing. Like in terms of really controlling for a single variable and then tracking it over time in a tool like Tracksuit. Do you have any advice for that? Or is it kind of an imperfect science and that's just the nature of it?
Yeah, it's absolutely an imperfect science, right? I would say, you'd want to correlate that with post-purchase survey data at the, when did you first hear about us level, but also at the channel level. So maybe TV is like, before your big campaign push, it's at some kind of predictable benchmark, but then you do a campaign push and then the percentage of people who self-report TV like actually increases. And so, use that as like a confluence methodology. But you can also, think about like, do we see changes in our marketing mix model, for example, where you have like an increased spend for that period, and then like how does the model like recalibrate? Do you recalibrate the model with like any holdout tests that you're doing at the time? Do you recalibrate it with priors? Like, yeah. So you're exactly right. As the media mix changes all the time as you're running tests and experiments. But I would argue that maybe if you go from like spending $500,000 consistently to $1 million a month, you've just increased spend by 100% for like, the months. You should be able to see that in the data somewhere. So whether that is how the media mix model is like changes how it weights the different changes to spend, or whether that is like an obvious change to post-purchase survey data. Like if you increase TV spend by 100%, like you shouldn't have you shouldn't be reaching benchmarks when you post-purchase survey data. That should change considerably. And so for me, it's just another data point that is like, okay, well, we have this kind of we have this way to like try and attempt to quantify people who don't even come to our website. They haven't even been to our website, right? And so, but how can we see if we are, with the goal of top of funnel is to create mental availability and become part of someone's future consideration set? Are we doing that successfully? It is like the consideration number going up, and does the consideration percentage change in like a meaningful way, in an obvious way through other parts of the confluence, that we can say, okay, we think TV was like like contributed meaningfully to this. And you're right, it's an art, it's not a hard science, but it's also getting people comfortable with this as well, right? It's about getting the team to understand that there are different ways and different methodologies to measure, and this is one methodology. It might make sense for you, it might not make sense for you, and it's just understanding like when's the right tool you pull from the tool set when you kind of need to understand and understand its methodology and what it
the MMM piece is really interesting, because anytime you take a channel and you drastically change the signal being spent here, right? If you're like, all right, we're gonna go from 100K to 250K, like the MMM should be able to take that additional 150K per month for 3 months and give you a really strong read on like what the correlation is between that increased spend and revenue that it's driving. So it'd be really interesting to like do that for 2-3 months.
Exactly.
And then be like, all right, well, what does the MMM say now? Because if the MMM is recommending the same media mix that it was prior and it's not higher, then chances are it's probably not driving a ton of incrementality, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think we're going to see the most results from this is doing something, changing the channel mix for a period of time where you have some time to understand what is going on, and not just like, all right, we're going to do this TV campaign for a week or like a month. Yeah, you might see some changes in the data, but like having a longer time period, and traditionally in MMM you do it once a quarter, right? You readjust like the model once a quarter. Now we have these great tools that we can kind of do a calibrated weekly or like monthly.
Or monthly usually.
So the change in feedback loop is quite faster now, and so again that makes it more complicated because you're recalibrating the model so often now, whereas previously once a quarter is really was like the standard of how you calibrate these models. So having some consistent data that you can say we are confident, we are relatively confident, we're like 90% confident that this spend now should result in this media mix, and we've used these tools to kind of like not even triangulate anymore. It's like 4 or 5 different methods, So
it's a pentagon.
You advertise more channels. The pentagon of attribution. So there's lots of tools. Measurements is challenging. Pick several tools to help evaluate. Similar to the shoulder dislocation analogy before.
That's awesome. I appreciate the run through. That's super helpful.
I just chat GPT'd if there was a triangulate for 5 points, and there's not. So we have the opportunity to maybe create a new
hexagonate. Pentagonate.
Awesome. Well, guys, I think this was a fantastic episode. I've got one more question here. Tyson, you studied jazz guitar. Do I have that right?
Yeah, it was the closest thing to heavy metal at university.
Sick, dude, amazing. This is incredibly cool. Is there anything that we can take from jazz guitar and apply to e-commerce?
Yeah, I wouldn't say jazz guitar specifically, but I'll talk about
metal too.
Yeah, I'll talk about music. I'll talk about music in general, right? So, in music, like I have a jazz band ensemble, and you have like layers, right? So you have like drums, bass. You have maybe 1 or 2 guitars. You might have sax, maybe trumpet, singer. And so you have these layers of complexity, right? And then over time, sheet music you read, and you have like the different notes, and every like instrument has its own, its own key, its own notes. and so in chord progressions, etc. And so, you know, in music, you have to like align all those things up to like work and function as a team. And if like the drums are slightly offbeat, you know, it's gonna sound bad. If the guitar is tuned wrong, it's gonna, you know, sound really bad. You know, put the other instruments off. So everything has to be in tune and like on time, like rhythm. And so that's similar to marketing, right? And so you have like all these channels that kind of layer on top of each other, and you have, you know, you have your measurement infrastructure, which might be the drums, setting the tempo, and you like setting the pace. And you go back and like see like how things are working. And then all the other like instruments are supporting roles, and there's different, and everyone knows their role to play, right? So drums like setting the tempo, with bass as well, kind of setting the tempo. You have your guitar, it's like, you know, and piano as well, that's like bringing like the different chord structures and like bringing the warmth to the different chord arrangements they can play, and then they're supporting the vocalist if you have a vocalist as well. So you have to like understand like how loud you have to be relative to the vocalist, and like moderate yourself there. Or maybe it's your turn to do a solo, and you've like, so what is the framework to do a solo? It's like, what chord progressions are we playing? I don't know if you've heard of this, the 4-chord song. So if you want to write a pop song, so it's like 1 5 6 4. So in the key of C, it's like C, G, A minor, F. And if you want to write a pop song, they're the 4 chords. So action step for everyone on this podcast, and the listeners out there, I would encourage everyone to go to YouTube and type in Axis of Awesome 4-chord song. And what they demonstrate is there's just basically every pop song is 4 chords. And so when you think about what else can we take from music, well, music has frameworks as well that you can translate. And this 4-chord is a classic example of a framework. And then, you know, you have that in marketing. What's a scaling framework? How do you like structure ad accounts? What's a framework for creative strategy? So if anything, there's like 2 takeaways. One thing is like the layers of the ensemble represent the different band members, represent the channels, and how the channels need to be aligned up in your marketing, and how you structure your marketing calendar every day. And the other part is there's like frameworks that different structure of a song has. So same with like how you have different channel frameworks or different scaling frameworks. I used to actually refer to myself like CMO is like the conductor as well. So you have like all the orchestra, and then you're like, all right, you like this section over here, like a bit louder, or like they come down here a bit quieter. And, you know, maybe that's like a budget analogy as well. So you have lots of inspiration that you can draw from jazz, but I'm really just a metalhead.
Got it. Yeah, I think we can all agree marketers are like the conductors, the lead singers, the like best looking in the band types.
Yeah, definitely the best looking, I'd agree.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, look, we're gonna call it a wrap on this episode. Tyson, thank you so much for joining. This was super fun.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Really feel incredibly privileged to be a part of it.
That was episode 13. Thank you again for tuning in. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends. We've got a bunch of great episodes coming up, so make sure you stay tuned. And thank you again to our sponsors, Motion, Prescient AI, Richpanel, and Haus.
What happens when the world's greatest 9-figure executives, e-commerce marketers, and DTC content creators combine? Something freaking huge. Head to 9operators.com, smash that I want to be the first to know button, and we'll do exactly that.